I just keep pushing myself to the best I can be. And that's all I ever wanted, just to be the best version of me I can. And I see a way to do it. And it's not an easy path. Trying to make a living from jiu-jitsu is not for the faint of heart, but it's something I love. And it's been such a key part in my growth as a human being that it wouldn't be right for me to not give back to that community at all. At least in my opinion. I mean, jiu-jitsu saved my life.
Hello, and welcome to the New Mission Career Transition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Caprellian, and I'm joined by my co-host, sister, and talent management pro, Alexandra Caprellian. We interview service members that transition to new careers, DoD representatives, and civilian HR professionals to provide you with lessons learned you won't get in a transition class and to help you transition with confidence.
Our guest for this episode is Elijah Butler, a prior service Marine that overcame substance abuse and other challenges on his path to becoming a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor in North Carolina. He tells us how BJJ helped him mentally, how becoming a father gave him purpose, and other great lessons learned for those that may encounter a challenging transition. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss the end of this conversation because the ending is the best part.
Elijah Butler, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Hi.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. I know I say super excited to have you on. I think I've said that to almost every guest, but there's nothing like being able to reconnect with somebody that kind of almost simulated murder on you on a jiu-jitsu mat. So, and it's not PTSD. I'm not getting traumatic flashbacks. I really miss the camaraderie of the jiu-jitsu class when I was down there in Swansboro, North Carolina, which is where you're at right now, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's great to be sitting here talking with you, Chris.
Yeah, lots of fun. So for our listeners, if you could just give us an overview of where you grew up and how you came into the Marine Corps and what you generally did in the Marine Corps, so we kind of have an understanding of where you're coming from and your background.
All right. Well, I grew up in a small town in Indiana, a little town called Angola. I enlisted 2 days after my 17th birthday. I was in the Pool program for a year. Bounced out, went to San Diego for boot camp. Went to Pensacola for A school and all that. I was a 7011 Expeditionary Airfield Systems Technician, otherwise known as E for Aircraft Recovery.
And what is that? If I can interrupt, what does that involve? Like, what kind of things do you do?
All right, so it's kind of a wide scope of work. Initially, we can go in, map out, set up airfields, light them, mark them, get them ready to go. Forward arming and refueling points is another thing that we did. But kind of our bread and butter is aircraft arrestments. So we have a couple sets of gear, the E-28s and the M31s, for actually catching aircraft. So if an aircraft has a tail hook and has an emergency in the sky, it can call out an emergency. We go get our gear started, ready to roll. It comes in, catches the cable, and we stop it. Get it out, let the firefighters do their thing, and get the airfield clear and back up and running as fast as we can.
All right, so your job is to essentially set up, maintain, and keep operable expeditionary airfields.
Exactly.
Kind of like a jack of all trades when it comes to airfield maintenance, airfield operations.
Oh yeah, we pretty much knew it all.
Where'd you go after you got your MOS?
So I went to Pensacola for schooling, and then after that, I went out to Iwakuni, Japan, and that's where I stayed out for the duration of my career, which was 3 years after, 3 years, a month, and a day, actually, from when I was stationed out there.
All right, cool. What was that experience like?
I absolutely love Japan. I didn't love Japan being in the Marine Corps, though. When you're stationed out in the Marine Corps and you're a low enlisted like I was, up until about staff NCOs, you're pretty restricted. Had to go out with a buddy. Now, this is back from 2015 to 2018. I don't know what it's like now. But back when I was there, you had to have a buddy to go out on libo. Had curfew, couldn't be out past like midnight, stuff like that. And it just kind of really made it hard to enjoy what Japan was without always having to do paperwork to go stay the night somewhere. Kind of like being super babysat as far as living out there. Being stationed out there all in all wasn't too bad because we got to go out on ops all the time, bouncing all over the Pacific, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Guam, Saipan, Tinian, Okinawa, Hawaii, like bounced all over the place. So it kind of made up for it. And if it wasn't for me being stationed out in Japan, I probably would have never found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that's it's a lot of mixed feelings. So
yeah, well, I can relate. I think we were overseas around the same time. I think our time periods overlapped, and one of the benefits of being stationed overseas is what you do is very relevant, and you get real world operational experience. But the other challenge is some of the there are the challenges with doing exercises or just having to operate in a foreign country. It's not your country. And so sometimes the restrictions can be a little bit challenging, but yeah, I definitely empathize with you. It was a great time, very operationally relevant when I was overseas, but some challenges along the way. And I guess we just kind of worked around it. And was a BJJ kind of like one of those things that you got into because you were looking for an outlet?
Kind of, sort of. So the way I came into doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or BJJ, was through this foundation called the Ronin Foundation. Now, when I went through the Ronin Foundation was just beginning. It was created by Adam James, and he was my OIC at the time. And I was kind of getting into some trouble, struggling with substance abuse and depression and everything like that. And he introduced me to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu through the Ronin Foundation, and I was like the first person to be pushed through the Ronin Foundation into BJJ. Now, the Ronin Foundation is a foundation that takes active duty guys and helps them with mental health issues through Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, stuff like that, and just helps them really find a purpose in what they're doing.
How long had you been practicing BJJ while you were in Japan?
About a year. I practiced for a solid year out there, and that was like my last year in the Marine Corps as well. It was really more of an outlet than anything at that point.
Did you finish your career while you were in Iwakuni, or did you do one other tour back stateside?
Nope, I wrapped it up in Iwakuni. I was originally out there on 2-year orders, and I extended for that for the remainder of my career.
So I'm sure like transitioning out of the military while you're at an overseas duty assignment probably has its own unique challenges. What was that like for you?
It was weird. So, of course, I say the whole transition period for me, like getting out of the Marine Corps and that first year out was just super weird for me in general. But getting out in Japan was different. So when you go to get out in Japan, you fly out about 2 weeks before you're supposed to get out, and they send you to either Camp Pendleton or Camp Lejeune. I went to Camp Pendleton and did my final 2 weeks there, and basically it's just like paperwork, lots of paperwork. It's like 3 or 4 half days of paperwork each week, and it's just slow and boring, and you're ready to get it done.
Yeah, no doubt. Did you use any resources, or did you have like a game plan in mind as you were preparing to exit the Marine Corps?
So initially, I was going to exit the Marine Corps, and I took 2 months of terminal. And I was going to enjoy those 2 months of terminal, and then I was looking at going back into the Navy to try to go into the Special Operations Command. But something along the way just made me kind of push back the Navy plan, keep pushing it back, pushing it. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but eventually it pushed back to the point where I was struggling with mental health, and I actually got a DUI, and so I couldn't even go back into the Navy if I wanted.
Okay, well, walk us through what you did after your separation and kind of the places you went and how you grew, because I know the man that you are today, and I've had the pleasure of, being on the mats with you and some other things, letting you beat me up during your MMA training. Clearly there was growth. If you could tell us a little bit about where you went after there and how it is you got kind of to where you are now in Swansboro, North Carolina.
All right. So kind of how I ended up in North Carolina. During the time I got my DUI, I was working a job as a pipe fitter. I hated that work. It sucked. I was stuck in aluminum foundries, which if you don't know what an aluminum foundry, just take a couple minutes and Google what it is. And I was putting up pipe in those types of facilities all the time. And now the people that work for that company and everything, they're great people. I love those people to death. Without those people took care of me at some of my low points. So I can't really rag on them as a company, but the work they do is not for weak-hearted men. But I was working there and making good money, especially when I went onto the road. I think it was January of 2019. I got a call at 4 a.m. saying I had to go to a foundry because all their pipes froze because they refused to insulate it. It was negative 20 degrees outside, and I was working outside. That was where I said, yep, I have got to move. And so I started putting my feelers out there. I hit up one of my old sergeants that was actually stationed down in North Carolina. I was like, hey, man, you living out in town? He's like, yep, I got a spot. If you want to come visit, just let me know. I was like, okay, cool. And then I found out Enrique Watson was also down here teaching Jiu-Jitsu, and that's our BJJ professor. So I was like, okay, he's down here teaching. My brother's down here. That's pretty good. And then I started working, saving up money, get back off of like an 8-week job in Tennessee, put in for a week's vacation, go down to Swansboro, North Carolina on vacation, kind of check out the area and everything, stayed with my brother. And at the end of that week, I was like, yep, this is it. This is where I'm going to move. He kind of, poked me in the ribs. He's like, I'll believe it when I see it. I was like, okay, even better. So I went home. That following Monday, right? I got off the road Sunday at like 9 o'clock at night, maybe later. That Monday I went into work, talked to my supervisor, was like, hey man, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. I just got a great opportunity down in North Carolina. I'm going to take it. He's like, awesome, sweet. Mind you, I had absolutely nothing set up in North Carolina. I just didn't want those guys worrying about me. So, put that 2 weeks notice in, started stacking my money from these last 2 weeks and from the road work, saved up probably about $5-6 grand, packed all the stuff up in my little red truck, drove 14 hours, showed up on my brother's doorstep, and he was shocked. He's like, all right, I'll get you set up.
Right.
Got set up and
you did tell him, hold my beer. Hold my beer.
Pretty much. So get down here. First things first, find a job. So I found a job spraying for mosquitoes. And then after that, we started working. Well, this is when the first gym was under construction when I first moved down here. So I helped Enrique button that up. And we had, I think we opened in May. May we were using it actively. And I moved down here May 19th. So May, start training, start working. And then we have the grand opening of the big gym, or the new gym, not the new gym, the old gym, in like June of that year. And then I just kind of start working, get to a point where I'm working for a realty company. And then I was like, all right, now I kind of want to go to school, getting a little bit of money in my pocket. Still training, not as much as I wanted to. And still at this point, I didn't even think coaching was going to be something I even remotely wanted to do. But I just knew I loved jiu-jitsu. And at this point, I was a fresher blue belt, just kind of getting settled into life a little bit. I left my job at the realty and started going to school full-time. And once I did that, it kind of opened up some more free time for me to start training a lot more, which I did. Started training, met a woman. Next thing you know, she's pregnant and I have a son on the way. Now, around this point, I don't think I'd quite gotten my purple yet, but I had started helping out with the kids' class at the gym. To me, I loved doing it. Like, I loved coaching the kids' class. I loved watching them grow and everything. And I wasn't quite sure it was really for me until I had to cover a class by myself. That first class I covered by myself, I still remember it. It was a pretty big class. At the time, it seemed like a big class. There was probably 18 students, all age ranging from like 7 to 12. It was the fact that they were all looking to me and listening to me and executing the commands that I was giving out. And it was like, I can do this. This is a piece of cake. Well, not really a piece of cake, but hey, I got these kids like going around doing actual movements. Everyone's positioning is not awful, but you know, like I have these kids listening to me, and for the most part, they're doing exactly what I tell them, and like that was awesome to me. I was like, man, I really think I could do this coaching thing. So I started to kind of pour myself into it a little bit more. Just absolutely fell in love with it, and then I got promoted to purple belt and started taking on more and more roles at the gym, and eventually we moved to the big gym. Once we moved to the big gym, I took over the homeschool kids program. To me, this was a huge step, massive step. Like I'm going to be running these two classes. Like these two classes are mine. About this time is when it was almost close to the point where Joseph was born. When I started doing that, maybe I think it was just like 3 or 4 months before he was born when I started doing the homeschool kids. Doing all that stuff, like jiu-jitsu helped relieve a lot of the anxiety I had about being a father. Just because in jiu-jitsu, like, it's hard to have anxiety when someone's trying to rip your head off or take your arm home with them.
I know what you mean. I use jiu-jitsu as stress relief from a very stressful job. There's something about looking at somebody on the mats who is probably 15 years your junior, but they were also a high school state champion at wrestling, knowing like, listen, I can't think about work. All I can think about is not letting this kid choke the life out of me.
Yes.
And a pure hour of that, you realized that you couldn't think about anything else other than that one person in front of you.
Yes.
And not
100%.
Yeah, not every place is like that. Every gym is a little bit different. Sometimes it's a little more friendly, it's a little bit slower. And then sometimes you go to some gyms and they're all just savages.
Yes.
And it is a thrashing, and quite honestly, that's what I needed. I needed my mind off of it. So that thing that you said, I know I'm getting a little excited, but I can definitely relate to what it is that you're saying.
Yes. And it wasn't so much, I think it was the break from worrying or having the anxiety that helped me actually deal with my anxiety. Same with my depression, same with any substance abuse issues that I've had. Like, not thinking about it actually gave me the chance to actually work on it, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it gave you some like mind space.
Yes.
To look internally.
Yes. Especially, like, I was super worried when Joseph was about to be born, just because, I don't know, it was my first son, first child. And I don't know, that was a huge anxiety for me. But when he was born, it completely changed the way I trained.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, tell me more.
So, training as a single man, especially as someone who didn't necessarily quite want to give their jiu-jitsu a purpose or just wanted to compete or something like that, versus a man that's a father and an aspiring coach, makes you train differently, if that makes sense. Because when you have that child in your care, right, jiu-jitsu isn't just about fun now. Jiu-jitsu turns into something that you are going to have to rely on to protect your child, at least in my head. And then when it came to being a coach, like, okay, I really have to pay attention. I really have to drill hard because I can't teach these kids wrong. Mm. Those are two different kinds of pressures that I put on myself with my jiu-jitsu, and it's pressure that I love. This isn't a pressure that makes me tired or anything like that. Granted, sometimes I'll let it push me to the point where I'm physically burnt out and have to take some time off, but that's with anything as physical as jiu-jitsu. But once my son was born, that flip just went off instantly. Like, sitting there in the hospital room holding him, like, okay, now I really have to step my game up. Like, it's not just about training to make sure my mental health is fine or that I'm in shape. It's training to protect those around me.
It sounds like the adoption of responsibility gave you a greater purpose in life. Is that an accurate statement?
100%.
And you were teaching the kids' classes while you were doing other things too, right? I think you were.
Oh, yeah.
What other things were you doing? Because I think you make it sound like you were just doing a couple of classes a day, but you were a busy man.
Yeah. So I would do the homeschool kids' classes in the middle of the day, Monday and Wednesday. And then for a while I was doing school as well. So Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 4, I'd be doing my classes. There was also a couple of semesters where I was taking classes during the homeschool kids class and Tuesdays and Thursdays. And there was times where I also was working. Like right now I'm working another maintenance job. It's just like general maintenance type stuff. But working this job on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and some Saturdays, just kind of keep myself afloat and give myself a nice little extra cushion for bills and everything.
So you've got the jiu-jitsu job going on. You're doing maintenance work. Where are you doing maintenance work at?
Believe it or not, Mac Daddy's. So Mac Daddy's is the premier bowling center on the Emerald Coast. You guys should check it out if you're ever in the area.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet. I think I've driven by it once, but it was only when I was getting ready to PCS from North Carolina up to Virginia.
Yeah.
And so you've got that, you've got the family life, and you've got just a sense of purpose. And that's why I say, like, you have an inspiring personality. Oh, and particularly just over the last couple of years, I think that's the reason why a lot of the students look up to you, even in the adult classes. I mean, your ability to instruct and really just show 100% commitment to the students was something that stood out in my mind.
Thank you. That means a lot, especially with someone that's as hard on me as I am. Like, I'm extremely hard on myself and extremely self-critical. So hearing stuff like that means a lot to me.
Well, don't worry. I'll give you crap later.
Oh, I know you will.
We'll do that. We'll do that offline.
Yeah. I'm surprised you're not about to come down here and try to throw some heel hooks on me or something.
I don't know, man. My back disagrees with that idea. My neck is happy that I haven't done it in a little bit. But hey, so what does the future look like for you? I mean, you're in a pretty good place. You're teaching classes. You're not a purple belt anymore. You got promoted to brown, didn't you?
That is correct. I just got promoted to brown belt earlier this month.
Heck yeah, and congratulations.
That's mind-blowing.
It's the weight of responsibility.
Yeah.
You got every purple belt wanting to tap you out now. It's like,
you have no idea. They've been coming after me hard.
That's good. That's good. So, but what are your future plans?
Man, I have a lot of irons in the fire right now. I would like to set up a couple of streams of passive income just so I can really just focus on training and stuff like that. I'm also looking at starting my own maintenance company and doing like general handyman type stuff here and there all over the island. Just because I think I'm at a point now, I have all of the experience I feel is necessary for something like that, and knowledge and contacts as far as being able to contact contractors and get them in for some of the bigger jobs, stuff like that. Just kind of being a bridge for people who need it. Also, I'm just going to keep hammering it out at the gym. Right now, I'm kind of giving my body a little break. It's been screaming at me the past couple of days. Like this weekend, I think was the most I've ever slept in a couple of years at any given time. So it was kind of nice.
It's funny how you get older and that becomes a big accomplishment, right?
Yeah. Like I slept from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I was like, oh my God. I did not know I was that tired.
I don't think I've even done that.
Yeah, it felt good. But after this next week, though, I'm going to start getting back in it hot and heavy. We have a tournament coming up at the end of April, CXBJJ tournament here in Jacksonville. I really want to enter into that, just kind of see where I'm at as far as, it'll be my first tournament as a brown belt. Just kind of see where my weaknesses are so I can go back into the gym, smooth those out a little bit. And then there's a couple of grappling promotions that are down here. You have All In Grappling, the Toro Cup, which is just like super fights and stuff. And I'm going to put in my applications for fights with them all throughout this year. I want to try to get into the cage at least once this year as well. I feel like my shoulder's finally getting to a point to where it'll be able to withstand it. That was kind of a big setback for me a couple years ago, was that massive shoulder surgery. But that's what I have for this year.
When did you have your surgery?
October of 21.
Oh. Is it healing okay?
It's as healed as it's probably going to get. So we're at the point where we're just rebuilding strength. It is a complete posterior labrum repair as well as a complete capsule reconstruction.
That sounds complicated.
Yeah, it was just like titanium anchors that hold the cartilage in my shoulder together now.
Well, congratulations. I think you've met the prerequisite to become an instructor in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Right? You got to have at least like one major surgery and a couple of tournaments.
That's what the stripes on the belt mean, right?
Yes,
like
number of surgeries and injuries you have.
That's right.
It sounds like in jiu-jitsu you have to be pretty vulnerable, knowing that at any moment somebody's going to try to rip your arm off and you have to protect yourself from doing that. So thank you for being vulnerable in this conversation too. One question that I did have for you, that it's an interesting one, but you've gone through a lot. You didn't have such a super clear path when you left. So if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were enlisted and you were in Japan, if you can go back to that person and tell him something, what would you tell him?
Well, I'd say the first thing I would tell him is, one, start jiu-jitsu sooner, if we're talking to me before I even started jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And if we're talking to me after I started jiu-jitsu, I would tell myself, it's all going to be okay. The path that you are on is going to set you up for greater things in life. There's nothing to really worry about. Take it one day at a time. I'm not the type of person that really looks into the past. I take the past for what it is, learn from it, try to move on. You know, as hard as my past may seem, I'm glad I've had it. It's made me who I am today.
And I bet your son is going to understand that even more as he grows up.
Yes.
I had a discussion with a future guest coming on, and one of the things that she said, I think is very applicable and correct, is that there's no such thing as a wrong transition. There's no such thing as a wrong path. There's just a path. And a lot of times, if you just work hard that path is going to take you to some place that you never thought possible. I mean, I don't think you probably saw yourself where you're at today 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Oh, I didn't even think I would be where I'm at today a year ago. I just keep pushing myself to the next or the best I can be. And that's all I ever wanted, just to be the best version of me I can. And I see a way to do it. And it's not, it's not an easy path. Trying to make a living from jiu-jitsu is not for the faint of heart, but it's something I love. And it's been such a key part in my growth as a human being that it wouldn't be right for me to not give back to that community at all. At least in my opinion. I mean, jiu-jitsu saved my life. So for me to not dedicate my life to it is almost kind of rude in a way.
And it's just another purpose to add to your list on that mission that you're on right now. Let me ask you something. If somebody doesn't know what jiu-jitsu is, a lot of times they think of it as a sport, if they even know what it is. Mm-hmm. But as many practitioners would say, the things that you learn in jiu-jitsu also translate to things that you learn about life. What do you think about that? Are there things that jiu-jitsu has taught you about being a father, being a human being, or just trying to be the best version of yourself?
Oh, yes. The biggest thing I've taken away from jiu-jitsu is patience. Especially as I've grown from a lower belt to a higher belt now, I can't rush stuff. Especially with the guys I train with all the time. Like, they know everything I like to do. They know all of my favorite techniques, and they've learned how to counter them. These guys, man, they're turning into killers. So now I got to be patient and pick my moves, pick my battles, pick when and where I go to these positions, pick when I let them pass and fall into a trap. Stuff like that. That's really honed in on my patience. And another thing it's taught me is that there is always more than one way to get to where you want to be. With jiu-jitsu, I can tell you half a dozen ways to get to the same type of armbar, the same armbar, right? The same thing in life, right? Just because one person made a bunch of money this way doesn't mean you can't do it another way or something like that. Anyway, patience, and there's always more than one path, are two of my biggest takeaways from jiu-jitsu as far as real life.
I know we've used up a lot of your time today. You probably have some kids you need to go out and train, but if there are 2 or 3 things you want the listeners to remember as they prepare for their transition and embark upon what will probably be their largest career change, what are they?
If you feel like you're in a bad place, reach out. There's always someone that loves and cares for you, whether it be someone that you're active with or a family member. Reach out. Number 2, find a positive outlet, whether it's jiu-jitsu, the gym, fishing, hunting, just something positive that doesn't keep you trapped inside of a house all day. Get outside, enjoy yourself. And number 3, don't take this life extremely seriously. Learn to laugh, enjoy it. And that's the biggest takeaways I would give anybody when they're about to transition out.
Heck, I think those are going to become my top 3. That's awesome. Hey, well, we've asked quite a few questions, but I'm sure there's probably something that we failed to mention or failed to ask. If there are individuals that want to reach out and ask you a question or maybe get in touch with you for any reason, how can they find you?
The easiest way to find me will be on Instagram. My handle on Instagram is pirate_guy_BJJ. Just go on there. You can follow me, shoot me a message, anything pertaining to jiu-jitsu, transitioning, anything like that. Or even if you need to reach out. That'll be the easiest way for anybody to get into contact with me.
All right, well, awesome. We'll definitely put that in the episode notes so that if you didn't catch that, just check out the episode notes and we'll put the URL to his profile so you can get in touch with Elijah. Well, Elijah, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, to be with our listeners. to be honest and genuine and talk about the struggle and how you got to where you are now. I think there's still a great path ahead of you, and I look forward to someday seeing you put on that black belt. So thank you very much for your time, Elijah.
Oh, thank you for having me, Chris. This is a wonderful experience, and I think it was a great way to kind of share the gospel of jiu-jitsu and how it can help save people. Also, if you're in Eastern North Carolina, come check out our gym, CXBJJ, down here in Hubert. You can look that up on Facebook as well.
Easy. I'll make sure I get those links in as well on the episode notes. Anyway,
Perfect.
All right. Hey, brother, I'll be in touch, and thanks again.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. And Elijah has left the digital recording booth, or whatever we want to call this. Sis, what are your thoughts?
You know, it's really refreshing to hear a story from somebody who just did not have a clear path. You know, I think that there's so many people that we've talked to that had an idea, but he really didn't. And it was really nice to have someone vulnerable enough to talk about it. And also, you know, it's hard for anybody to end up doing what they actually love doing. A lot of people don't get the chance to do that. And the fact that BJJ, I had no idea how much trust you have to have and patience you need to build in order to successfully do that to where he's at today. And it's just very admirable. It's really great.
Yeah, I think he shares a very good message as far as using it as an outlet. And I think he's right too. It doesn't have to be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it can be a number of things. It could be the sport that you like playing. And the good news is, depending on where you're at, sometimes you can find adult leagues for that type of outlet. Sometimes you can't. There are many options out there. I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of them. And I will tell you, there is an element of team building that comes with that because it is such an intimate experience. And I say the word intimate because I can't think of a better word for it. And I know it's not, the word intimate normally isn't used in that context, but being with teammates that are going to put you in a joint manipulation, and they'll apply pressure only to the degree that you know if they applied more, something really bad would happen. That takes a level of trust. There's physical contact with it. And then there's just a lot of team building. And so I haven't found a connection nearly as pure in other sports that I've done as I have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think it's great that he found it as that's such a healthy outlet. Also, it's great that he ran across the Ronin Foundation. For those of you that may be in his position, I'll share the news. Ronin Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and they help active duty service members combat suicide, depression, alcoholism, PTSD, and other mental health concerns by sponsoring their training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm going to make sure that I get the link put in the episode notes. If you or somebody you know could probably use that outlet, hey, get them registered or at least share the URL because it's a great resource. I think he just tells a very compelling story, a different side, and his top three were awesome because we haven't had somebody talk about the human dynamic, and some of you might be trying to quell the demons in your head, the doubters in your mind, and he gives a great story on how to do that, how he did it, and good recommendations on how to overcome those challenges mentally and spiritually. This wraps up another great conversation, and thank you very much for listening. If you like what you heard, you can support our podcast by giving us a 5-star review, or, whatever you think we rate. Any stars would be good. 5 stars would be great. 5 stars. You can also follow the New Mission Career Transition podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and other podcast apps. You can follow us on Instagram at New Mission CT. That's New Mission Charlie Tango. We would also love to hear your feedback. You can DM us on Instagram or send us an email to our address newmissionct@gmail.com. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are preparing for your own transition, know that I'm right there with you. So until next time, stay focused.